Hey guys, guess what we're doing today? We're going to be installing a 21 circuit wiring harness into that white car behind me. Yeah. Now, if you've been following along, you might recognize it to a degree. Yeah, we jumped ahead. If you're new to our channel, that's a 1956 Chrysler that we shortened by almost 20 inches. The front panels, we just hung them. The hood hasn't been fully installed yet. It's mounted on the hinges, but it hasn't been gapped to the front fenders. You might notice the front fender's kind of tweaked out at the bottom. There's a bolt missing. So there's a lot of things that still need to be done. We have been extremely busy to get this car to this stage. Yesterday we just installed the glass, rolled this thing outside to have the sun do its magic on the seals, have them settle in, and I have to say that this Alpine white looks absolutely stunning in the sun. And we put a little bit of fairy dust in there, metallic, just a hint of it, just to give it that little sparkle. You won't see it in here, you'll see it outside. So anyway, before we get into this, let's go for a quick walk around and then we'll get into wiring this beast because I am frankly getting tired of pushing it around. And there we have it. Front windshield, that's original with a new rubber seal. We got all that to work out. Hood bird, we left it as you can see. And it looks pretty trick on there. Still keeping its roots to the Windsor design. There's no room under the hood to work it in nicely, and I didn't want to lose it. It's just too nice of a piece. And how else do you open the hood? The front is so streamlined that you can't really get your fingers in underneath. So you can grab by the beak, yank that hood up. Get the steering wheel installed. Steering column installed, some of the gauges. We've been working on cleaning everything up and trying to get things looking good. We're not re-chroming all the gauges. There are some little pits in it from age, but the way I see it, it's a survivor and it's a hint of the past. Now when it came to the back window, we reused the original molding. It was still pliable enough to do what it needed to do to get that glass in. Now these windows are a real challenge, I'm going to say, to get in. You have to go in from the top and then swing the bottom in because of these corners. And you can't use a rope trick. And well, as you can see, the liner's also been installed. Except for the dome lights. We still have to wire that, which we'll be doing today. Now at the back here, we incorporated some artwork that people wouldn't see for another probably 15 years. On the muscle cars, the CUDA. We incorporated a CUDA graphic into the tail fin. It worked out quite well, playing off the lines of that tail light. When you get this car outside and stand back about 30 feet, these lines really work together well. Steering wheel, haven't gotten around to that. We just threw the old one on to help move the car around a little easier. Now back here, you're going to get another surprise. Anybody that's owned a late model Chrysler product may recognize these items, these fixtures. Anything? Anything in the comments? Chrysler 300, 2008. So we kept with the Chrysler theme and incorporated a set of consoles that will incorporate some gauges, a GPS screen that'll hide within the console. And we'll work on that together. And something to hold your drinks in the back. Well, in the front too, but something for the people in the back to hold their drinks. Now, as I mentioned, this is a 21 circuit wiring harness I picked up off the interweb. It comes with pigtails for the headlights, some butt connectors that I won't be using, a grommet, that's important, and yeah, the fuse panel, signal, hazard, and all the wires in the circuit. They're nice heavy gauge and indicated every so many inches with where everything needs to go. So I'm going to unravel this on the table here. We can get rid of that box. Don't need this for now. Grommet, save that for later. And maybe a pair of side cutters or a knife might help. I'm not sure where the end is on this tape. Oh, right here, look at that. Wouldn't you know it? Okay. Instructions, we'll save them for later. Everything's been zip tied. So although this harness has most everything included that we need on it, we do have some additional circuits I will have to incorporate. For the center consoles, we're going to install a fuse as well as some bus bars, so we're not loading up the terminals on the ignition switch and whatever with like 15 different wires. And we have a main solenoid and kill switch. This here is the old rat nest that we pulled out from under the dash, as well as the harness that was going to the back of the car. Somebody did rewire the car, but if you saw the episode on stripping out that dash, it's an absolute disaster as to what they have here. They got butt connectors followed by twisted up wires followed by tape and whatever. So the only reason I kept this is a reference, but we're not running with a regulator because we've installed an alternator on the car, so that reference no longer necessary. So this whole thing here is garbage. A wire. Now these are pretty self-explanatory. One part of the harness will go under the dash, another part of it will go to your front headlights, your engine harness, as well as to the back of the car for your tail lights. Right now the main decision is where do we locate this fuse panel? Things are pretty tight in behind the dash gauge area, and to work on anything to get to access your fuses, you don't want to be sitting on the roadside with your door open trying to replace a fuse that may have gone for who knows what. I always like to place them on the kick panel on the right side there, but we want to keep that clean, incorporate some speakers into there. So what I'm thinking is pop that glove box door open, since we have a console here, and mount it just in behind there on a bracket. There's a speaker that's going to be installed for the original radio. We're keeping that. We're going to do an episode and see if we can get that radio fixed up and working. I haven't really tested it. It's just something that I'd like to keep with the car. To chop a big hole out in there, like the one we have, and install the GPS unit, it just doesn't go with the styling that I want on the interior. This is a little bit of a stretch already, but it's going to work out quite nicely with those gauges, because the gauges that are there, they have a nice classic appearance, but we're going to use the modern gauges. Now you may have noticed that tack that I've mounted on the column. Since we are running with a muscle car theme, the cars in the 60s, if anybody recalls, a lot of them, I think some of the Chrysler 300s had them up there, but a lot of them had them mounted on the console down below under the dash. And when you're driving, it's a bit of a hazard to be, looking at your tack down there and focus on where you're driving. We're going to pop that glove box open, take a look inside, and see how much room we have for that fuse panel. Now, the reason I installed so many of these components, I need to know exactly where everything's going to be. Tack, that gauge, we just finished cleaning it, so that's going to be located, but for the most part I know what's there. Temperature, amp meter we're not using, it's going to be a dud. Oil pressure is a direct line, hydraulic line. What was the other thing? There's 4 things on there. Oh yes, fuel. I guess that's important too. Okay, so just looking inside this glove box, see that there, that's a damper for the vents on the heater core there, on the heater ducting. There's 2 of them, one there and one over there. Reinstalled all that. That lever is for the front cowl vent, to pop that up. Hasn't been set up yet. You can see the cable isn't mounted. I'm going to take and lay out the wiring and see if we're okay with the fuse panel there. We may have to move it, I don't know. There's no room here because of the big radio. Back in there, as you can see, we've got the mechanism for the brake pedal. We modernized the brakes on this car, so it runs with a modern booster and master cylinder. Gas pedal, recovered that. So a lot of little things that have been upgraded. Wiper motor, that's staying the same. It's not vacuum, it's electric. Haven't tested it. Hopefully it works. If not, we'll retrofit something into that. The blower motors, when I get the hood open, maybe we can see it in here. Barely. Oh, there we go. That's a modern GM blower motor retrofitted to the squirrel cage that the Chrysler had. Those guys, the 2 of them need to be replaced. The bearings were a little noisy, you know, they were talking. But the biggest thing was the wire on the insulation was chipping away all the way inside. So with all those factors to consider, we just took and scrapped them, pulled off the cages, scrapped them, and got those cages mounted onto fresh motors. If anybody's ever curious to see how much those motors are, just Google it and make sure you're sitting down, because a little bit of a sticker shock there. Alright guys, so let's follow the wire trail up inside the dash. Now these are just the beginnings, we get in the car, of the layout for the wiring. It appears as though we can get that fuse panel in the glove box, get behind the glove box. The tricky part is the wiring for the ignition switch. Normally, I'm guessing they would have the fuse panel down here somewhere, but because we have headlight indicators up above there, there's a series of knobs, and the ignition switch down here, and the column power for the turn signals up and behind there. We're just making this harness work in this location. I think if we had the fuse panel down in there, we wouldn't have enough length to get up to the headlight power switch. Normally they're over here. Speedometer, that's cable driven, not have to worry about that. Tachometer, he's got plenty of wire so we can work that in. Here's the ignition switch. You can see all the terminals. Okay, focus, yes. You can see all the terminals they were putting on there. So we're going to clean that all off. I've got the schematic up there on the wall. Let's put that in the cup holder. So I'm going to go ahead, jump out, and get you guys on the tripod and start stringing these wires through. It may seem really daunting if you've never wired a car before. Even though everything is indicated, this may seem a little daunting because there's just so many wires and what has to go where. We have our new cooling fan installed, so I have to get that wired in on a relay. And again, the relays will all be located inside the car. Tape, we're gonna have lots of this stuff. There. Okay, that's there with the tack. Got to figure out cruise power, radio ignition, radio constant power. So that's for the radio. We're going to have 2 radios, as I mentioned. One up there, the original one, and the one in the console that you won't see unless you open it. It'll have the GPS. Headlight power. Again, we have some of these wires have to go back up there. Gauge power. Radio, wiper power. Okay, so all of these, what was this one again? Door lock power, window power. So let's put this coiled up. You know what really helps sometimes? Zip ties. Do I have any in the car? Okay, zip ties. Zip tie this wire up here to help identify where things are going to go. We can nip that off after. Okay, looking better already. And we don't want things crisscrossing in every direction. This guy has to go through the firewall and down. That's the speedometer cable. The other thing is we're going to have two temperature sensors, one the original one and the aftermarket one. Get rid of that, just a quality control. Left backup fuel gauge. See, really nice that they've split the wires up into groupings. Brake switch, high beam on, ion, spelling mistake, brake switch. So some of this goes down, some of this goes up. This is something where you set a weekend aside and just get into this. Unfortunately, it's Saturday afternoon already, so I have today and tomorrow. High beam, brake, that goes down to the brake switch, left signal indicator and right signal indicator. Will it reach? Yes, it'll reach the foot pedal. Fantastic. Or foot switch. See, back in the day, you never had your high beam indicator on the column, on the stock. You had this little funky button on the floor. Left tail parking light, fuel gauge, left backup. Left backup. You got left and right backup lights? I guess so. That makes sense, yeah. You think they'd both be together. Okay. Temperature. Ooh. Tachometer. Read. Oil. That goes here. The front parking light goes there. Why would you do that? We may have to pull it back in the harness. Oh no, right here. Look at this. Once you get organized, it's a matter of cutting, crimping, and all that stuff. But until we get to that point, tachometer, we can just put it here. This is the ground. And what the heck is a fan? Power antenna. And we can just bundle that up like that. Gone. Okay. We're getting down to these. A little bit of water come in when we were doing the windshield. It ran down through here and ran out. That's a good thing. Right rear turn, third brake light. We don't have a third brake light. Electric fuel pump, nada. Trunk light and dome light. Left backup fuel gauge. I guess left backup is just backup lights. You think if they'd indicated it? Left tail parking light. Okay. So that's, I guess, pretty self-explanatory. Not sure why I thought you'd have a left and a right. They just should call them rear parking lights. It doesn't need to go all the way back. Okay, let's try that. I've got the cables run down the side here for the fuel door and the trunk release. But as for the electrical harness, we're going to run that down the center of the car. I hope we have enough length. Here we have the wire in the trunk. Hopefully we have enough room, or enough length. Let's see. I'll probably run this along the side, around the back, and in through this back there'll be a cover right through here. And I'm not sure if we're going to need that. Right there. It'd be nice. We can always work something in into one of these holes. Look at that. We have just enough length. Left rear turn, left backup. Oh, fantastic. Right turn, right backup. Should be a running light. Right tail. Perfect. Pink one should be fuel gauge. Oh no, look at that. Okay, you see? So by laying this out, I can already see that the fuel gauge level is not going to be long enough. So what we'll do is just come around down the center and in that way. Pull that out. Look at that. There's a split right there. Okay, perfect. Might do like a smoke effects feature and power it with that, or even a cutout for the exhaust. We'll see. Third brake light, again, that goes up here, and we can yank that one out. So by coiling things up, I'm just noting to myself that you don't need those. Left rear and right rear turn. So that goes there. Pull out this one. That tape, I can deal with that tape later. Battery's getting low. So it does take time to get all this done up. So that'll go to the taillights. So now I can take these harnesses, find appropriate spots in the firewall. They do have provisions for harness in through there, as well as over there. We're going to see if we can use one harness hole, have everything come through in one spot, and go from there, maybe along the top of the firewall or in behind. We're not going to have the relays on the front fender, so that's something you can hotwire your car. They're going to be put away. There is a neutral safety switch on the tranny underneath that we have to take into account. Can't forget that, because you'll be able to start the car in any gear, and that's not safe. So give me a second, I'll get those wires through, and then we'll plan our next steps. I haven't mounted the fuse panel yet because I want to make sure that what we have, which looks like it's going to work, will work. Solenoid power, choke power, alternator. It's always great to have a dedicated choke wire. You don't want to pick it off your distributor and take power away from that for your choke. Have a dedicated choke horn button. Alternator exciter. We have an alternator. Coil positive. Okay, so this all has to go that way. And that'll end up along the firewall, I'm thinking, and we'll get some loom for that. And this is, I think, the headlights. Yeah, it's long enough for headlights. Temp sensor, fan. So from our relay up in here for the fan wire, this is going to feed that fan over there. And that's where the bus bars come in, because I don't want everything on the terminal on the ignition switch. I'm not sure where that thing went to here. You don't want to start stacking a whole bunch of stuff on here like they did. 1, 2, 3, 4, like it's okay. The studs are long enough, and I'm sure these old switches are heavy duty enough, but we don't want to, you know, overload the thing. It's a few years old, and you know, you want to take care of your senior items. Yeah, Phillips. Left low beam. Yeah, okay. Let's pass this whole harness through. Above the column, yeah. That way we can tuck up all the wires and you won't see anything in the end. Okay, oh. Over the top. Do it again. Easier to reach under. In you go. A little further. Okay, that looking good. And the hole is there. When you're pulling wires through a firewall, you got to be gentle. You don't want to strip the insulation off of as you yank it through. Just take your time. Maybe I get that grommet. It's still intact, a little aged, but it will provide our, wow, double harness. So this will give us the protection we need to prevent any of those wires from cutting through on the sharp metal of the firewall. Like, I've heard of cases where guys will run their nitrous lines through a hole they drill in the firewall. I'm just going to stick it through because that harness, or that grommet does have a split in it, which will help us tremendously. Okay. So here we have our power antenna. Okay, that gives us an extra wire up front. Tachometer, oil sending unit, left front parking light. Oh no, what are you guys doing? Fan, ground, and temperature sender. Okay, so some of these I'm going to pull back because I'm going to have the wires running that way. Ground, left park, power antenna. I think that's going to be our secondary temperature sender. Okay, and these will go to the front. As like that. We'll just drape this through here. Okay, those three. Coil. What's this one? Alternator. Yeah, that goes on the other side of the car. So I'm just sorting stuff right and left sides. This is, I think, based on a GM wiring circuit system. Okay, choke. Alternator power, wow, okay. So all of these, solenoid power. This one goes down the driver's side. There we go. So this is going to be draped across the back side to go to the other side of the engine. Antenna power, that has to go that way too. Ignition switch start, okay, so that one goes to the starter, and these will go to the signal lights to the front. Left, left, how come I got two lefts? Left front signal, left high beam. Where's the right signal? You guys got to be kidding me. You missed it. They didn't indicate the wire for the right turn signal, which I'm guessing is blue because they're all running in the same place. Left low beam, left high beam, right high beam. It's got to be pigtailed right there. Okay. That's fine. Right low beam, left low beam. Okay, left front signal. So just process of elimination. They forgot to label it. This dark blue wire is the right turn signal. Yep, okay. And these wires are going to run down the left side here, across the front, and to this side, and out this hole. Everything appears as though it's going to work where it needs to. Right side, left side, all the sensor wires for the engine, that's essentially the wiring harness for the engine. We're not going to have a plug anywhere there. You just disconnect it from the sensors on the engine. Simple enough. These will run down to the starter. And inside the car, we're going to have to wire loom all that later. And finally, this spaghetti mess right here, this is what I'm going to get into. I'm going to start hooking things up, cleaning it up a bit more. We need to make a panel for the fuse panel, a little piece of sheet metal or a bracket, I should say, not something flimsy. It has to be rigid. You don't want anything moving and jiggling when you're driving. And back here we've got our fuel sensor, some extra wires, and the wires for our tail lights. And that pretty much takes care of everything. That wire that goes up to there, that is for the trunk light. Alright guys, so for the most part, whatever's important has been wired in. Yeah, it still looks like a big spaghetti factory, but we'll take care of that in a few minutes. The switches up there for the headlights, wipers, panel light, dome light, all that's been taken care of. We've got the wires running up for the little indicators up there for the emergency brakes, signals. Down below we've got the switch wired in for the high-low beam. New cars don't have that. They have it on your stock, but these old cars, we had it down on the floor. The main harness that runs to the back is just about there. A couple wires that run into the middle section as well as the rear here for your power accessories, power window motors. The switches are going to go in the middle on the consoles. And for the power seats, we have to run some wires for that. They're there, but we just need to get them in place. So that's going to be done with a bunch of zip ties, and we're going to do a general tidy up. We have the gauges to wire in yet. The wires are there, but we got to get them established. We'll leave enough slack for the gauges so that when the harnesses go in, we're not short, but I think we can take care of that, get them in. Trunk, that needs to be cleaned up back there. We need to get those tail lights wired. Again, the wires are there, just the harness has to be finalized. License plate light has to go down through the floor with a grommet, so that'll be taken care of as well. These wires here, that's for the power window switches. 2 wires this way, 2 wires that way, and then the feed for the switches down the center. Engine compartment, again, for the most part, wires run. We just need to terminate all the connections now. This here, we're not leaving that the way it is. That's done. Fuse panel has been mounted, as you can see, in behind the glove box door there. As for a glove box, you're going to have 2 of them in the consoles. Check out the early 60s Chrysler 300s. It's going to look similar to what those cars had in terms of a console and bucket seats. The new master cylinder has a switch on it, so in case we lose our brakes, we'll have a little indicator pop up saying no brakes. And windshield washer squirters. We no longer have that foot pump down below. Yeah, you used to have to pump that with your foot as you're driving to squirt your windshield. That's going to be gone. We're going to have a little button somewhere there. Somewhere out of the way where you don't really see it. It's a cute little button. That's over here. So, and it has a little windshield washer. Come on, focus. There we go. Windshield washer. It was focused. Sorry, guys. Something's... There we go. Windshield. I'm trying to get you to focus. It's shiny is probably why it's doing that. There we go. Windshield washer squirter indicator on the button. And we'll probably illuminate that when you push it or before you push it. We'll see. Alright guys and gals, before I get into the car and show you what we've done in the wiring, let me show you the original schematic for the Chrysler. These here are the headlights, indicators for the headlights, high beam indicators, turn signal flasher, rear lights. Up in here we've got the dome light, map light, light switch, dash panel lights, fuel gauge, ignition, ammeter, which you've deleted. That's a voltage regulator, that's gone. Starter, circuit, generator, which is not being used anymore. Up here we've got the distributor, heater motors, wiper motor. And from this general schematic here, which is not too bad. It looks a little bit confusing because of all the lines, but when you trace it through, it's not too bad. Now let's go look at the car itself. And in here, we've got the actual wiring for the car. Now, from a few minutes ago, I showed you what was going on, and well, a few minutes ago was actually a few days ago. And I've been slowly cleaning things up, and then, you know, to the untrained eye, this may still look pretty messy. But we've got a lot of circuits happening here. I'm not going to bundle everything in just yet until we do some final checking. I've been checking already. You can see the very invaluable 12-volt test bulb there. We also have a continuity tester that got us through the initial stages, and basically tested everything circuit by circuit by circuit until I was confident that we weren't going to blow any fuses. And as it turned out, we blew a fuse. Replaced it with the same fuse. I think it was a 15 amp. No problem. So it comes down to a bad fuse. I double checked and triple checked everything. So anyway, getting back to this. That there, right there, that black thing, is the fuse panel. And that belongs up inside the fuse box, which is behind the glove box door. It's all nicely hidden. For the glove box, you're going to be using the center consoles. No problem. Now, across the top there, just below the windshield, right there, Nick, those are your headlights, windshield wiper motor, dimmer switch, and in behind that little bundle of wire right there is your map and dome light switch. So it alternates between the light on the dash there to shine down on your panel and the dome light. And all that is controlled with that little push button right there on the pillar. So when the door is closed, the lights are off. Unless, of course, you turn it on with that little switch up there. When the door opens, that push button comes out, grounds the circuit, dome lights come on. I'll show you all this in a second. We have all our panel lights for the gauges, tachometer, all working. We have our emergency brake light working. It's in behind the tachometer, hidden a little bit, but when it lights up, it's quite visible. I don't have the speedometer in yet because it's right there actually, very nicely cleaned up. We didn't want to busy ourselves with too much in the way. I had my arms in those holes from underneath. I was on my back for I don't know how many hours, tidying up, cleaning things up, and making sure that all the circuits work. We have a few hot leads here. When I power things up, these are going to be 12-volt hot, and they go to this device right here, which is your temperature control, fan control, which controls a fan up inside behind that fake clock right there, and on the outside of the car, on the firewall, there's the HVAC fan. So we have one for inside air, one for outside air, and that thing there controls it. Again, I didn't put it in because it's going to be interfering. Now, when I first powered things up, I couldn't figure out why my panel lights weren't working. Something very simple. You kind of smack yourself afterwards. See, you only have one wire coming in and no more. You need two wires for a bulb to work. These little prongs here, that's your ground. So as soon as you attach a little jumper to them like this, they worked. So no problem. That was one of the first things that had to be tested. That there is just a ground that was hanging down. I need to mount that. This massive harness that goes to the back of the car. It was simple initially. You had your fuel gauge, tail lights, and backup lights, yeah, and license plate light, which is tied into the back. So we had a few wires, wasn't too bad. But then we had to add the power windows. 2, 3, and on this door. So 4 power window motors. Power seats. Had to add the power for the power seats. So that's what all that black loom is right there, those circuits. And that right there is, you guessed it, a Haynes Fiero manual booklet. And the reason I got that out is back in here, back here somewhere, we've got a bunch of circuits, schematic diagrams, not the engine ones, but interior ones. And since I wasn't too crazy as to how Chrysler wired their dome lighting system and certain circuits, I referred to something from a GM manual. Chrysler has a few odd things to deal with. Got that all worked out. We got a bunch of extra wires for fuel pump, trunk light if we want to put that in. Rear speakers have been wired in. That's about it back there. Everything's tucked away. I still need to put the loom on on those cables that run there. But that's most, oh, there's my screwdriver right there. It hit on me. So, oh yeah, and we have a power trunk release. So that was, again, another set of wires running to the back. So there's a lot of stuff happening. Now, before we start on the next stage, I want to make sure that all the circuits are good. See, a little bit of a spark there, nothing too crazy. And we have the lights on, so it's kind of hard to see. But anyway, we're going to connect that just like that. That'll be enough. We're not starting the engine. Up front here, we've got all the headlight circuits, cooling fan, horns, all dialed in. Let's go inside. Hey, we have light on the dash as well as on the ceiling. See, we got the mood lighting going. That was borrowed from another car, obviously. And whoever, well, somebody put an aftermarket bulb in there. We'll change that around later. That was a surprise. See, blue light. So, where do we start? Let's start with the ignition. Kind of hard to do with one hand. There we go. Okay. There. So we have ignition on, first stage. You're not starting the car just yet. We could just touch it. She's in neutral. She's not going to fire. There's no fuel to it. And I've disconnected the coil, which is really important when you are troubleshooting because you don't want to burn up your points. Here we go. Touch, touch. We have life. Hear that? Cool. So that's in neutral. If we put it on reverse, we shouldn't get that. Boom, nothing, dead. So there we go. Leave it at that. We need to replace the emergency brake bulb yet. I need to get another one. We ran out of those. And in terms of dash lights, let's see if I can do this with one hand. These switches are heavy duty. Come on, I don't want to arc anything. Okay. I'm gonna put you guys down. There we go. Need to hold the switch and turn it and check out those lights right there. Let's turn off the dome light. Maybe that'll help. Don't those look awesome? All cleaned up, all restored, took them all apart, cleaned everything, cleaned the needles. You're in there with a Q-tip, just, you know, detailing everything. So that's all taken care of. We have our dash lights, which can be dimmed using that switch there. And dome light, I'm not going to play with that right now. Normally that's mounted in the body, in the dash. We can dim it with that switch there if we wanted to. I'm not going to. That means putting the camera down again. It's not held. So wipers, we don't have the mounts mounted yet. They're being painted. So I can't turn that on because the arms are just going to randomly start moving around inside the dash, perhaps damage something. See, that's there. Yeah. Next thing, we can flip this ahead one more stage. Come on. Nope. We can turn on the signals. Here's the left signal. Out front, we have light. You can see we have the flasher. Looks pretty cool there. And back here, we've got the left turn signal. We've got the headlights on as well. Second direction is all good. And we got, there we go, headlights. And we're not using a standard bulb for the headlights. I've got a retrofit kit for LEDs. It looks like a standard halogen, boxes up there, but it's a little brighter. Back here, I think you saw the tail lights. And down below here, we've got a really fancy switch that you touch with your toe to turn on the high beams. And we have our high beam indicator right there. That other light at the very top is for your master cylinder pressure switch. So if you lose pressure on your brakes, that will come on. Okay, so turn off the headlights. Done. What else can I show you? We have a jumper lead here somewhere. Oh, I borrowed it. Let's take that off. No longer need it. And connect to ground here. And we don't touch that, but I'll show you what I mean about the little bulbs. We give them some, we ground them, come on. Oh, I turned the headlight off. There. So panel lights are on, and I'll show you where to go right here. The panel light comes on when it's grounded. So when I get clipped into the speedometer, there's 2 holes, that'll all work. These are hot right now. They're feeding those switches for the heater, so I have to be really careful with that. Oh yeah, check this out. This is the exciting part too. On your steering wheel, you got this little prong here that when you push the steering wheel ring with your fingertips, not your hand, you get the horns. Yeah, it sounds like a big foghorn. Very cool. And that's controlled through a relay in the fuse panel, next to the fuse panel, right there. So, all right, guys. Those gauges up there, they're going to be mounted in the instrumentation, or in the information center, I should say, down here on the console. I don't trust these older gauges. They might, work, but they don't really show a temperature. And I like to see what I'm running at. Oil pressure, again, I like to see what I'm running at. Now when it comes to fuel, well, you'll know when you're out of fuel. So that's that. Let's turn off the ignition here. The radio is wired. We have a backup camera going to the back, hence the backup camera. Once this goes in, there's a ground here that needs to be attached. I'll take care of that. Power windows. Let's see. Oh, Nick just turned off the ignition. See, that's a good thing. Touch, and, oh, you heard it right there. There we go. I think my battery's getting low. So, that all works. Very happy. Like I said, it started out where I thought I'd have it done by the end of the weekend. There's been a lot of late nights. Front of the engine, we got our harness tucked up under there. There's one that runs around the back of the engine to the choke, to the, we call it resistor up there for the coil, and for that blower fan. And you can see the harness coming through here. We have a grommet for that, but we haven't installed it, and I haven't wrapped up any of these wires. That there is a maxi fuse for alternator. So the alternator feeds through that fuse. Anything goes wrong with the alternator, will blow the fuse and not fry our electrical system. I like that battery there, that really looks bad. But anyway, we get a fresh battery for this car. Resistor wise, we have a dedicated 12 volt line coming from the start circuit. So when you touch your starter, we get full 12 volts feeding the coil. But then when we're running the car, when it's in just going down the road, idling, whatever, it's going through the resistor to cut the voltage down to help preserve the life of that coil. This thing is going to really shape up and look really nice, I think, with all the gauges reinstalled against that cherry red background, the dash panels. You can see our power locks there, and barely over there, if I move my finger it might focus, a bunch of grommets. That's the other important thing I got to mention. Run your wires through grommets. You don't want them chafing on the metal edge, creating a dead short and knocking out your electrical system. So there's a grommet that has to be installed right over there. Same on this side. And I think that's the only places we have. On the firewall, or on the core support, there are grommets in place. There were grommets in place. There are grommets in place. Yeah, I'm going to change that one out. That's got a split in it. It's that's the original one. So I'll take care of that. And this right here is the stereo for the car, the radio, AM radio for the car. And I've cleaned all the knobs, all the dials, all that works, but I need to get in and see what's happening, or give it some juice and see, and a speaker, and see if we have any life in it. That's actually the antenna for the car. You might notice there is no antenna. We're going to hide it somewhere under the ceiling panel somewhere, just to, want to keep the outside clean. Yeah, so we'll get into this soon.